Hey everyone, welcome back to Lady Empire. I have such an amazing guest here with me today. This is an extremely special episode for me because this is my colleague, or not even a colleague. She is far superior to me. Christine, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Elle.
Awesome. And I just want to start off right away. So let's start with you telling us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up.
I was born in 1966, so pretty kind of long ago, so to say, in a mid-sized city, which is located right at the border to France. So I was born in a region which was also in the last centuries always a ball which was played between France and Germany. So the whole region is called Saarland. It's a small region in Germany, and there's you can see there a little bit of this French lifestyle kind of. So I recommend to go there, everybody. So I was born there, raised there. I went to school. My father was a teacher at the grammar school. My mother was a teacher at the kindergarten. So I came from a very intellectual family. But honestly, we were living in a house with my grandparents and my grandpa, which I really adored. He was a hand craftsman. So he was really somebody, he has his workshop in the cellar. And I was fascinated. And I joined him in the cellar when he was doing things, repairing things, working with all the tools. I wanted to know which tool is for what. And so he educated me really decently in all these kind of tools he used. I wanted to get to know how to repair my bicycle myself. So he taught me how to do it. And so I grew up, I would say, in a very small and very nice family. And yeah, that's where I was born, so to say, or raised.
I love that so much. And I want to talk a little bit about your early education. And when you were sort of introduced to STEM, right? Did you always have a passion for science and technology and engineering and math? Or when were you sort of introduced to that subject?
You just have to see the period in where I was raised, in the 70s and 80s. In Germany, you had three TV channels, a couple of radio stations, but there was no computer. The computer was just, on the horizon, so to say. But at school, I was always good in math, and I also liked math. And that was also good because I was lucky because I also had good teachers, because I think teachers are so important to help. And so at school, I also then discovered I liked physics, I liked chemicals. So all these fields at school, I just liked it. It was easy to me. I was always curious. I wanted to understand how things work. And I think this came also from my grandpa, because I also wanted to know what he was doing, how to repair a roof. He was kind of, he knew how to do roofs. That was interesting. And he explained to me the basics in physics. And so at school, that was just I had good teachers, and so they really fostered also my interest. And in German schools, you have then at high school in the end to choose three minors where you do your final exams, your Abitur. And I choose mathematics and physics and English. So I would have loved to choose instead of English chemicals, but that was not allowed. So you have to choose. You could not do only STEM areas. And so I graduated also in my final kind of Abitur in those three areas. And so it was always close to my heart. I was always curious, and I was very lazy. And I think mathematics or physics or chemistry, that's things for lazy people, because you don't have to really learn things, but if you got it, you got it, and if
Right.
you didn't get it, So I think it came to, me as a person, as a pretty lazy person, that was really something which helped me a lot. That I was also luckily, easy going in these fields, so that I understood it also easily.
So I think in the US, we have this idea that, women are supposed to be caretakers. I think that a path that's carved out for most women in the US is to be a nurse or a teacher or some sort of caretaker, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that's how you felt growing up in your culture as well? Or do you feel like you had a path of science and math? And, can you
Mm.
elaborate a little bit on
Yeah.
that?
I think that's the same in Germany. So caretaking, also being, a mom at home, being a nurse, teaching, and that's really something which is also in Germany or in Europe a pretty female kind of profession. And but honestly, I'm not a good caretaker. And I always said that the least that I could do is being a nurse or or a doctor, because this is really what I'm really bad in, and therefore I am also not that caretaking person. So I'm really more that analytical person. I want to understand things. I want to analyze things. I want to know how things work. So I think I was a little bit different. Nevertheless, I never felt so different. I just felt that I was, good in math, and
Yeah.
others wanted to become a doctor and want to be, more teaching. And I loved teaching because I also loved to explain the things I understood so that people and other people also understand them. Because this is what I learned in my school years, that a good teacher is really key, and that many more people can understand how the technical mathematical world works if you have somebody who explains it to you in an easy to understand way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I kind of want to jump to your years at university. So, talk to us a little bit
Yeah.
about what you studied at university.
There's a nice story around that, because, as I just said, I graduated at high school in math and physics and English. So, um, and I was the first in my family to go to university. And you have to be, in Germany, universities are for free, or let's say the fee is very, very low. So everybody can go, but I was the first one. So nobody at home could help me. At home, everybody said, well, choose what you want to, just choose something where you can earn your own money. And well, we're open, we support you. And then there was a consulting hour at the university. So I thought, let's go there. And there was a guy, and I asked him, I love math, so I would love to study mathematics. Only I don't know what to do afterwards as a profession, because I know if I study medicine, I will become a doctor. For mathematics, I don't know anybody who is kind of as a mathematician as a profession. So, well, what can I do when I've finished studying mathematics? And he told me, well, first you can stay at university in academia, or you can go to an insurance company, because they need to calculate death tables, such things. And at that point in time, it was like, there was something going down. It's really kind of like I was, having a blackout, so to say,
Yes.
oh no, not mathematics. If that's the only, perspective I have, no. So tell me, what can I study where I have all the possibilities afterwards when I graduate, all industries, but I have a lot of maths in. So what can I study with a lot of mathematics, but with all the possibilities afterwards? And he told me, well, then probably you should do economics, because in economics you can do a lot of mathematics, but you must not do. And I said, okay, that sounds reasonable. And then I started to study economics, and already in my kind of bachelor, period at that point in time, we had to do a couple of exams in mathematics or in statistics. That was easy for me. I just passed them, and a lot of my co-students, didn't succeed, had to repeat, were really fighting with all this mathematical stuff, and I just did it,
Easy.
on the fly, so to say. So therefore, I studied economics at. And then I also, at a certain point in time, I was interested also to at least listen in a little bit on the physics studies. So I went there, but never of topics. So I did my economics, graduated, did my master, and wanted to start working because I'm not that, I'm not an academics person. So I'm more that practical person.
So let's talk a little bit about how you got involved in studying and working in technology, right? SAP is a huge technology company. Talk to us a little bit how you started working for SAP and how you even got introduced into that technology world.
When I graduated after my master's, at that time in Germany, it was a diploma. I started to working for a spin-off of the university, which was founded by a professor. And he did this kind of computer science and economics. So he was kind of, mixing both areas, and he had a startup, a consulting company. We did consulting, and this professor was a buddy of a guy called Hasso Plattner, who did also some lectures at the university for that professor. So, and well, then that was natural that with this consulting company startup, also SAP at that time, a very unknown company, was one of the consulting topics. So there was a big department doing SAP consultants. So my first touch point with SAP was visiting a training at Waldorf Training Center around a module which was called R2. And I even don't know what's that in English. It's it was in the controlling accounting area. So I did a trainings in R2, which was at that point in time, you didn't have a PC at home or a computer. I was lucky that I at school had at least a computer, one computer per class. We had one, so that at least I was used to it. So I had already some touch points with it. And that was where I started. So I was in this consulting company, but after close to 2 years, I choose to look for a new challenge. And I got to know a mid-sized software company doing software for retail and for automotive. And I joined that company. And the day I wanted to start, my new boss called me and said, would you mind if your first working day is in Waldorf with SAP? You know them? Because that company I was hired at that time was acquired by SAP. Mm-hmm. So I never applied for SAP. I think we were the first acquisition of SAP. So we were at that time the competition in retail software, and SAP wanted to start, retail. And they kind of acquired that company. And so my first day was in Waldorf, again in the training center in Waldorf.
Wow, this is so fascinating. I can't believe this. And so you were like one of the very first, even employees of SAP. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
And I want to even jump further ahead and talk about how you co-founded the Business Women's Network at SAP. And for all the listeners out there who don't understand the scope of this program, this is a huge program at SAP for women at the company. So talk to us a little bit about what led you to create this program and co-found this program at SAP.
So you have also here to go back in time. When I started at SAP, that was 1994. I think the company had around about 4,000 employees worldwide Waldorf, there was one building, the building one. So it was a small company. Nobody knew because, well, it was business to business software at that time. Software anyhow was new. And so at that point in time, also we had flat hierarchies. So between me and the board, there was just my boss. And that also was pretty clear. And it felt like, big family. It was, it was more a family feeling. And then over time, well, the company grew. And it was obvious, hierarchies were put into place because we needed it. You cannot manage a company of 10, 20,000 people with very flat hierarchies. So the first, people took over, and I also had the aspiration to become a manager and also express this. And I had I was lucky. My boss's boss was a woman called Anne. She was hired by Mr. Hopp himself personally. She was very long with SAP, even compared to me. She was much longer with SAP. So, and she then in the early 2000s, and she really managed a big organization. She was invited very secretly to a workshop led by our head of health, still in today, Natalie Lotzman. And Natalie said, folks, we have an issue at SAP with the women, or with the women not making a career. And my boss's boss, Anna, she said, no, look at me. I made it. I'm reporting into the board, no problem. And then Natalie convinced her and some others on her level to come to this workshop. And then first Anna went there and said, we don't have an issue, but I go there because I do a favor to Natalie. But after 2 days, she came back and said, we have to do something. We have an issue at SAP. We don't, we can see the pyramid. We have, on the basement, we have a lot of we have a lot of women working, and on the top level, we have too few. So that's a clear business case. And so it was like a snowball system. These workshops continued. They were very secret because nobody really wanted to touch the topic. Because at that time, it was not a topic. It was not on the political agenda. It was not on companies' agenda. So diversity was not invented yet, so to say. Mm-hmm. And so over time, this group of women who were invited to these workshops grew. And we then also, connected beyond the workshops. We saw we all had similar issues with our careers, with not progressing in a way we could. And we said, we want to do something. And then after, a couple of even years, I would say, where we did it more on a very informal basis, we said, folks, now we have to go out. We need to find a board sponsor. We need to have a board member dedicated as a sponsor. And we want to make it now kind of an official network. And this is what we also did at that time. We had a board member. At that time, it was Ernie Gunst, who was our COO. He's not with the company anymore. And with a couple of others, we said, and we do a kickoff with him, really, professional. And this is how it started. So that was the initial thing. And also immediately we got a lot of support. And we had a nice article in our SAP, in our internal portal, also reporting about it. So the company also was very open to it, so to say.
Wow, this is so fascinating because I myself am a part of the Business Women's Network. There's many chapters, right, across the world. And I'm a part of the Denver, Colorado chapter. So I love being a part of this network. And so I want to talk a little bit about what your goals were in establishing this program. What did you really hope to accomplish when you built this program from the bottom up?
Yeah. For us from the beginning, and we were lucky because we had a good consultant. First of all, we set it up inclusive. We said we are welcoming men because we need our male supporters or allies. That was the first thing. Second thing was we were thinking also about, is this a global movement or is this a, let's say, more local movement with global representatives, so to say. And we said, yes, we need to have it local because we had locally different challenges. And therefore we started also, and like, say we have now so many different chapters in so many different locations, and each location has probably kind of own goals. And for instance, if you look to India, you have probably different goals than you have in Germany or than you have in Denver, Colorado. So therefore we said that. And then the interesting thing is we always wanted to be for professional, because we didn't want to be kind of seen as a feminist or as a, recipe exchange crew, but we want to, business. That's why we called it Business Women's Network. So we all do what we do is related to business. We want to make SAP more successful. Mm-hmm. We wanted to foster women, and we said, and therefore we needed to have a roadmap, because it all started with a business case, which was done by Natalie. And when we started officially, we said, now we need to have a roadmap, because this is what you have normally in business. So we developed a roadmap, and I think it was 2006, the first roadmap. And we said, we need this because also, we go to our board sponsor and we say, well, this is our roadmap with which what we want to achieve, foster women, train them. But the big goal is, and we need to have a really challenging goal. And at that time, we said, what is a really challenging goal for SAP? And we said on a 4-year roadmap, the real challenging goal would be, which we will never achieve, never, ever, but let's write it down. Having one woman on the board. So we wrote that down. We want to have, by 2010, a woman on board of SAP. And we all were convinced that this is such a stretched goal, we will never achieve that. And so it was incredible. I think the real kind of the trick with it was that we really talked about it. We put it on our slides. We put it, on our roadmap. We communicated it. And I'm still convinced that at least it supported that we, before 2010, had the first women on the board. So that was, I think, the big goal. But at the end, we just wanted to make SAP more successful, because we thought from the beginning, more diverse teams are more innovative and helping companies to be more successful.
Mm-hmm. That's phenomenal. I love to hear the background and the history of this super impressive network that I enjoy being a part of. So thank you for creating this space for women at SAP. It's amazing.
Thank you for still supporting it. I think we all need the many, many women at SAP, but also outside of SAP, who stand up and just express their wish to become a leader or to just talk about the topic, and help also the younger women, to be self-confident, to go their way, be it as a nurse or as a mathematician, help translating what's in the business, why it's so important or so interesting and awesome to work for a tech company like SAP. So I think that's our task, and we need to also help the next generations to, be even more successful.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about the next generation, actually. And I want to hear why you think it's so important for young girls to have access to STEM in early education. And I've done a lot of research on this, and just thinking back to my early education, and yes, I studied science and math, but I didn't have a passion for it. And I think it's mainly because there were no role models in this space. There were no female mathematicians and scientists in your school books, right? There was no one you could look up to and learn from that was a female in this space. So talk to us a little bit about why it's so important for young girls to have access to these types of subjects.
I think, first of all, we have to help them to be very self-confident from the beginning, probably in the kindergarten, or at least in grammar school, because they can do it. It's no rocket science. I think also that self-confidence, and I also was not that self-confident when I was young, but we need to help them to understand that they can do it. And therefore, I totally agree. It's so important to have role models and to have also, I call them the low touch role models. So, not the, like, me, the pretty old successful woman, more the very young woman who's just started, to help them, who's more the same age, the same generation. The other role models are important as well, but it must be kind of on a lower level, low touch, so to say. And I think it's very important to understand that they understand how creative also, or how creativity is needed. And importantly also that you need at least you must not study physics, but you have a decent understanding around, the rules of physics or chemistry to understand the world, and in the end to help to run the world better. Because if we want to make this world better, a lot of things come through innovations. And thirdly, also, I think that it's so important, and it did not change since I started at university, to give young girls a good impression what professionals do. So what do I do at SAP if I'm a project manager, a UI designer, a documentation writer, a translator, a comms person, we have lawyers, we have all have to have a decent understanding of what we're doing. So they need to know at least a little bit about what SAP is doing, about the products. But, the careers and the fields are so different. And therefore, it's important that they have a decent education. As said, it must not be a professional advanced, but they have to have a good foundation in it. And we have to help them to understand it. And especially the most important thing is to help them be self-confident around it, and to help them to understand they can do it. It's no rocket science.
Mm-hmm. And you bring up such a great point about the different careers that are out there around science and math. And I'm thinking about, when I was growing up, my parents just always said, well, you should go into business, study business, because that's all they knew. That's all anyone knew about the careers that were out there. If you studied business, you would have a career no matter what. And I think, my parents had such little knowledge around science and math and even technology. They had no clue what the careers were around those subjects. And so I didn't even explore those subjects. And I never even thought about studying seriously those subjects. So you bring up such a great point that there's so many different careers that we don't even know about and that we don't even know exist,
Yeah. And even today, it's said that a lot of professions in the future are not yet invented, because through technology, through new innovations, a lot of new professions will arise that we don't even know today. So we have to really translate and make young girls understand that they have to have a decent education, and that then the world is open. And probably also the big wrong thinking that I also had in my mind is, when I graduated at school, I thought, if I now decide for a topic at university, this will be a decision for life. So there will be no possibility to do something else. So that was my thinking. I didn't even know that in the end, well, what you study at university is kind of giving you the Autobahn probably to the future, but you can also, take the next exit and do something else. It's more like you have still all the options. It's only important that you have that good and broad and decent education, but it's no decision for life. Mm-hmm. And I also think it's very important, and therefore also teachers are so important, because they are the first role models. As you say, often parents just don't know. They have also their own kind of area in where they work in, where they're coming from. So how to understand all the different areas and fields and professions that are out, that you cannot make this happen. So it's important that teachers support our role models and show that it's no rocket science, that they show the role models of the world. And often these ladies of the past are not known. So who knows about Margaret Hamilton. Margaret Hamilton was a team lead in the Apollo program. Without her, Apollo 11 never would have landed on the moon, because she developed the software for the Eagle, for that, landing entity. And she made it software error prone, so that when they landed, the astronauts were on the Eagle down to moon. They got an error message, and they thought now they have to stop the mission. And then they checked back with her, and she programmed the software in a way that she found out that that error was no big deal for the landing itself. So she said, ignore it. And nobody knows her, but she was a key success factor for the successful moon landing. And so I think a lot of those are also not, we must much more use these examples and show. And she had a small child, so she was not, all these good examples from the past are not known. Hedy Lamarr, an actor from the, I think, 30s or 40s, beautiful woman who was at the same time an inventor of things and, did basics. We have so many interesting role models from the past, which nobody knows. And that's very unfortunate. So we have also to help there to make them more, even more famous.
Absolutely. I agree. And I want to switch gears again. I'm jumping all over the place, but I have so many questions for you. You're so fascinating, and you have such great knowledge around these different topics. And I want to talk about women in tech at SAP. And this is what most of your work today revolves around, right? So talk to us a little bit about this program, how it got started, and why it got started.
Yeah. So women in tech, and I have to confess, I was, more than 25 years in development-related roles. So I'm, my comfort zone is in software development, and now I'm leading a team, and we care about women in tech. What's it all about? We found out a couple of years back, and we had a great event. So we have, at the beginning of the year, each year, we have a developer kickoff meeting. So the whole world of developers kind of collects virtually or in person, at that time in person, most of them, in a big arena. It was at that time here close to Waldorf, the big ice hockey stadium. Thousands of people on site one day, developer kickoff. And guess what? No woman on stage. There was just one demo where a woman played in the demo, a marketing lady, which did not really understand what software is. So a couple of further things happened that day. So that developer kickoff, from a woman's perspective, was really a disaster. And also we expressed this then, and also the man expressed this then to the respective board member for development. And he said, oh, that must not happen again. So that was the start. And then there arose the idea, not only in development, we have too few women on stages, but that's across the company. And I think it's not even limited to SAP. So only in the last years, also this kind of thinking arose that, all male panels are just not a state of the art anymore. And what we do is we help to bring our women in all their different perspectives on the stages of the world. And I mean, stages like also here, this podcast for me is a stage. So, and we talking about role models again, this is that we have women, expert women, and we help them to be successful on stages. So we train them. We say, okay, yeah, we have different trainings. It's the power of voice. It's around storytelling and all these things you need to know. And then we help them to be on the internal stages, but also we try to put them on external stages. And I said it's the broader sense of stage. We want to make them visible with their expertise, so that also again that the outside, even the young women understand how many different professions we have at SAP and how different are the ways of the women into the company and in their professional career. So that's all about that. So this is a good complement to what the Business Women's Network is doing, or our diversity and inclusion, that are more focusing on the leadership and all the career topics, and we are focusing to make our female experts visible. Mm-hmm. And help also that we reach a goal like 30% women on stages at SAP. It must not be less anymore.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love this so much. And we've talked a lot about your professional career and what you're working on professionally. And I want to talk about another program that you're a part of that is a little more personal, right? So you are the president of the German Informatics Society.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about this program, what it is, what are your main initiatives that you're working on here?
Well, this is actually, it's not a program, it's an association. I always compare it with the ACM, which is let's say, the thing that you have in the US, which is also the big computer association. So we have this here in Germany as well. It's smaller than the ACM because, well, Germany is smaller than the US. And I'm now the president since the beginning of this year. So I've been this only for 3/4 of a year. And we are doing a couple of things. First of all, my big topic is, we talked about it, education. I want to bring this topic of computer science to schools across the country. And we have a very, difficult situation in Germany. We have our Länder, so to say, what you have also with the states in the US. And they are all independent when it comes to their curricula at schools. So, and they have all different. So it's an exhausting task. And we want to bring computer science as really a mandatory topic at schools, which it is not today, because we think it is so important, because you have to get a touch on it at school, because everything you have at school already lowers the burden for the future. And we see it today as so many professions where you need at least basic computer science knowledge, how to use it, how it works, even if you go later in a very different direction. This is all over the place. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that we also help because we are we are not a political lobby. We are lobbying for the topic. So we talk to politicians, for instance. We also support the German government. They are running programs. They're running often programs, especially for young people, to help them to understand what is artificial intelligence. We are doing hackathons. We support hacker schools, all things which you today do in order to make the topics attractive and very tangible. So I want to make it tangible for the people, and also express, how broad the topic is. You have robotics, you have artificial intelligence, you have databases, but you have also, UI, you have UI, UX. So a lot of these things. So I think that's the main things. And then as an association, we do a lot of, conferences. And so the standard program, what such an association is doing.
Wow, this is super fascinating. And, as you were talking, I was thinking what's going on in the US, right? And sort of comparing what you're doing. And, it's almost a trend now that I'm seeing that schools are offering or, establishing themselves as STEM schools. And you mentioned even hackathon, and I'm thinking about how I've seen different schools, host these robotics competitions and we've talked a lot about in this interview how important it is to expose young girls and young women to these types of events and these types of subjects, and just, developing those skills and just showing them what's out there is so important. And I'm thinking about my elementary school that I went to, right? Kindergarten through 8th grade. And it's now turned into a STEM school. And, I think that's so cool. And just thinking about how, if I was there now, how different my life could be now, So it's super fascinating to think about. And I love to hear about what you're doing here.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's so important. And I'm always a little bit pushy on that because I think we cannot lose time. We have, these topics are running so fast, but at the same time, they need also so much creativity. So always people are thinking computer science is, a very dry, not so interesting topic where you always have this, stereotype. You're just sitting in your office alone the whole day, just programming, dark and this
Yeah.
nerdy type. And, to say, no, it's such creativity. Look alone at the robotics, what it needs to build a robot, or what it needs to really kind of, develop a nice app, which you can use. So usability is so important. And you have to also think about how to apply. So what I can do with things. So AI as such, or a robot as such, is not something which you just have because, you want to do that. It has to have a purpose, also in caring of, also for nurses, there's now, evolving a lot of these robots that help elderly people, who help the nurses to really take care of elderly people, or to help, in hospitals. That's all computer science. So you help the world run better when you kind of have a good, decent computer science education.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more. And so I want to just close it out. We have covered so many different topics. You have shared so much information. I've just loved this so much. So, and I'm sure our listeners have too. So, where can our listeners follow you on social media or find you on the internet? Any websites? Where can we see what you're working on and what you're doing?
Yeah. So mainly I'm on LinkedIn because that's, the topic, or the professional. I'm still, talking in the professional context. So you can find me there. I have a Twitter account which I also randomly more or less use, not in a way that I should. So the main thing is, follow me on LinkedIn, where you can see what I'm doing. And there's, unfortunately, for the German Informatics Society, that's more for people who speak and understand German, because obviously that's a German page where you could see a lot what I'm doing. So for everybody who understands, speaks German, or even uses then, I don't know, Google Translate, you can also do there. You find a lot of the activities that I'm driving in my with my role as the president there. So that's the majority. And I know I'm not a digital native, therefore my digital presence or my social media presence is very limited, and I know I should do much more. But that's one thing where I can really improve. I have to confess. And I'm using email. You can also email me, and also no problem. That's still my favorite channel for communication, and I know I'm old-fashioned there.
As long as you have LinkedIn, it's all good.
There I'm up to date, and I'm posting things I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, Christine, thank you so much for everything you shared today. I think our listeners definitely gained tons of information, tons of knowledge from you. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun. And also, it's always good because, you also ask the right questions. So also things come to my mind that I would not have thought about in the beginning. So thanks for that great interview. And I hope that you have many more fascinating interviews. Thanks so much for having me.